everyone, welcome back to QSR Nation, your weekly source of food service marketing and business strategies for success. Here are your hosts, Josh, Beth, Tony, and Grant from the PFS Brands National Headquarters in Holt Summit, Missouri.
Hey everybody, welcome back to QSR Nation. As always, we have Josh, Beth, and Tony in the QSR Nation National Headquarters, or PFS Brands National Headquarters in Holt Summit, Missouri. Grant is out today, but he'll be back next week. Today we're honored to have Jay Wilkinson, the CEO and founder of FireSpring. Jay, welcome to the podcast.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Great. Now, you just kind of want to tell us a little bit your background and how you got to be where you're at now?
Sure. I am a lifelong entrepreneur. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, like a lot of us weird people that think it's cool to go out and fail over and over again. I started several companies, probably I think about 8 companies by the time I graduated from college, and I finally settled on something that worked, and it grew pretty fast. I moved to New York City and published a magazine there for several years. Then I moved back to Nebraska. I grew up in farm and ranch country in central Nebraska. And my great-grandfather actually was a good friend of Buffalo Bill. That's how far back we go there.
Wow.
On the plains in Nebraska. and then I've been building ever since then a software as a service business and an interactive agency that helps mostly for-profit companies that are more focused on their why than their what, so impact or purpose-driven businesses, and then also large nonprofit organizations. That's where we focus.
Awesome. So obviously FireSpring's based in Central Oklahoma then?
We are in
Nebraska. Sorry about that.
Lincoln, Nebraska. No, but Central Oklahoma is like our arch nemesis in football for over 100 years. So
nice.
The best way to get right at us is to claim we're Oklahoman.
I'm glad I could do that to start the show.
Yeah. Now we've got everyone at ease. We're good to
go. So, I know you're doing a lot of work with business, like you said, in both nonprofit and for-profit entities. One of the key things, obviously, for any business to be strong is to have a solid branding. And where do you think that you can give help to customers to know, like, where they need to take their branding to, how they need to build it from the ground up, and why it's important to have solid branding for any business?
Yeah, I kind of see this as a core foundational exercise in who you are and what you stand for and why you are who you are as the first step to really establishing a compelling brand and a brand that in 2018 and beyond people want to align themselves with. And so what I'm talking about there is companies that, again, going back to what I started with, companies that exist more for their why than their what. And it's not something that you can, just one day say, hey, let's come up with a brand that, that makes us look like we give tons back to the community or we care about the environment, whatever, while you're spewing sewage into the canal behind, the business. It doesn't work that way. In today's world with Glassdoor and everything else that exists for employees and for potential customers, tools like Yelp and others, you can't hide. We're all in glass houses. So in my opinion, the first step to establishing a solid brand is to start by looking in and starting from the inside out and making sure that we start by establishing a truly genuine and sincere principle that we're here to make a difference, whatever that means for your brand or for your business, whether it's in the lives of your employees or in the lives of the customers you serve, or by elevating humanity in some way, whatever it is, however your business product or brand helps the communities that you serve, we start there. So I always believe that whenever we're talking with someone about the process of branding and building a brand and a brand story, it always starts from the inside out without question. And then, and only then, can you start to do the work on how to elevate that.
Well, and that's exactly point on, because if you really understand what your purpose is, not only can you build a stronger, better business, but you build one that has longevity in mind, and also one that attracts talent that want to be a part of that purpose.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And there's so many ways to do that. You can invite your customers and the advocates of your brand or your business to become part of your story. You can connect with them about the things that they care about, and you can tell stories about the people you serve. So there are so many ways to pull the important customers and the brand advocates into your brand story, and so many ways you can do that. But it always starts with the why.
Yeah, that's very Simon Sinek-y as well. He always talks about the why as well. And I 100% agree. I also think, though, as if you're a young entrepreneur starting up or you're starting a new business, you better have that passion, that why behind you, because if you're just focused on the what or the money at the end of the rainbow, you're never going to stick through it through all those failures.
Yeah, I think despite what Mr. Wonderful says on Shark Tank, it is not all about the money, and it's not all about the profit. And I think the minute any client, customer feels that your brand or your business is all about that, they are going to go another direction. And it's becoming more and more evident every year that goes by. And I'm not a huge fan of making all the millennial distinctions. I think that, we're all humans. We all make decisions and have differences just, based on where we grow up and, the conditions we grow up in and all of those things. So I don't say this is a millennial thing, but again, every single year that goes by, we see this continue to elevate over and over and over again, the importance of companies and brands making sure that they are aligned with the positive outcomes that the people that they serve want to see.
Well, I mean, we talked about in an earlier podcast a couple of weeks back about, we're kind of giving our predictions for 2019, and one thing we all talked about was authenticity. That the strength and the power that conveys with consumers, as well as potential franchisees. But having that true purpose and that authentic approach to where you're not just out there in it for the money, because people, like you said, they sniff that out, and then you lose brand loyalty, you lose consumers, and then people feel like they're being used versus being a part of something.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of sad. I feel almost that the word authenticity has become so inundated in so many articles and discussions. It's become more of a buzzword lately, and it's sad because the concept or the essence behind what we mean by authenticity it's absolutely dead on.
So what are some of the pivotal aspects of building a brand storyline?
Well, the first aspect of building a brand storyline is being really clear as to what your foundational elements are. I'm a huge believer in the B Corporation movement, conscious capitalism, 1% for the planet, the different types of alignments, because what that does is it helps from a consumer perspective identify the aspect of your brand that is in alignment with what they're looking for. And so whether or not a company or an organization becomes a member of the conscious capitalism movement or 1% for the planet or becomes a B Corp isn't the important part. It's about the foundational elements of what those different movements stand for. So the first part of it to me is having a foundational story that makes it possible for people to really clearly identify with what's important to you, and then decide whether or not that's in alignment with what they want. And I'll give you an example. We've all heard about the Tom's Shoes example. Buy one, they give one. We've all heard about all of the different aspects that businesses do where they give back to the communities, whatever. Here at FireSpring, our purpose as a business is to leverage our people, our products, and our profit as a force for good. And we do that by giving 1% of our profit, and actually we take 1% of our top line revenue,
Nice.
and we give it back to the Fire Spring Foundation, which then supports nonprofits throughout our region. We give 2% of our products away by supporting at a very, very high level we call it our Power of Three program, 3 nonprofit organizations where we give hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of support and marketing each year for those 3. So we're hyper-focused on them. And then 3% of our people, and that's done by having every single employee in our business, more than 200 of us at our headquarters, every one of them go out into the community and volunteer 1 full day every month to an organization that aligns with their personal mission. So, we don't tell them who to volunteer for. They go choose something that aligns with them personally. But the point behind that is we have a story and a starting point where we can share our Power of Three, and it's going to resonate with certain people, with the clients that we serve, and it gives us a framework and the guide rails by which we can take that story and elevate it in so many different directions, so many different ways. So I think having a foundational description of the purpose of the business or the organization that's expressed in a way that is easy to understand, and then that all of the other things that we do for marketing and extending awareness about our products and services to others is going to obviously incorporate that baseline foundational element of our purpose.
I think one thing that just, is very important just to mention is that, not only should the entrepreneur have that mission in mind and knowing exactly what they want to do and bring back to the community, is that making sure that you're bringing on board all of the people that are going to support that mission, because not only is the owner going to be the whole visibility of what that mission is, but you need to have all the other voices that are going to be able to support you and be able to get that message out as well, because a lot of times they're going to be the ones that are going to be out in the community. They're going to be the ones that are going to be talking about your brand. So you have to make sure that you do find those brand advocates that are going to be helping you in the future. And just like you said earlier about the glass door, making sure that everyone understands what that core purpose is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
How do you take that model then and transfer that into, say, like a franchise branding to where you can feel like whether it's a Champs Chicken or a McDonald's or a Taco Bell, like in our industry, the food service side, how do we convey how we are supporting our mission, our purpose to the consumer, so that they can really feel like they're a part of something greater than just a purchase?
I think far too often, but by the way, I own franchises, and it was how I got my start with the business we're in now. I owned printing franchises through Alpha Graphics, and I will tell you the number one thing that I did that separated my franchise from the pack, so to speak, from a marketing perspective, is I'm a huge believer in the concept of R&D. Which obviously stands for rip off and duplicate. And I'll share with you that when I started up my franchise, this is all the way back in the 90s. So I'm saying that because, for context, it was before the internet, or before Al Gore made it what it is today. And I was out, and I got in my car, and I traveled all across the United States, and I visited more than 100 fellow franchise owners in my system, all people that were part of the Alpha Graphics network at the time. And I walked in cold. I didn't tell them I was coming. I just walked in and said, the owner or manager around, and I introduced myself. Every single place where I went all around the country over the course of about 2 months, took a meeting. They all gave me half an hour of their time. And I just asked them, what's the best thing you've done? What's worked and what hasn't? And then, just going through that process, what hasn't worked. If you could go back to the beginning and start over, what would you do differently? And so I did all this, and this was in the 3 months leading up to my opening as a store. My business, my Alpha Graphics store, ended up being the fastest growing Alpha Graphics franchise in history. It hit $1 million in recurring, revenue, in annualized revenue, I should say, faster than any store in that franchise's history. I'm sure it's been beaten, by now. This was a long time ago, but I attribute 100% of that to the fact Like my grandmother used to say, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Listen. And this whole prospect of just learning best practices from others, I think too many of us think, well, we need to innovate. We need to create something out of thin air. We need to make something up. And I don't believe that that's necessary. So fast forward to what I do today with the franchises that I still have. My brothers and I have several restaurant franchises in the Taco Bell and KFC and some brands like that. And we can differentiate our stores, number one, by making a very deliberate effort to change the customer experience inside the store, number one, to make sure that every single team member feels pride in being part of that store. And, we are constantly trying to compare ourselves to how other stores in our system are doing so that our team members know that they stand head and shoulders above the examples set in other areas. So, and just think if an entire franchise network had that kind of alignment. And there are some that do. You can go to Chick-fil-A and get a really good example of how the vast majority of their franchisees elevate the employee experience, which in turn elevates the customer experience. And it doesn't cost that much more money to do it, but just the in-store feeling that people have when they walk into a place where the team members really care about the work that they're doing, rather than just punching the clock and over on their phone in the corner trying to play Minecraft or something. It's fascinating how much strong leadership will do, and so I always go back to operational issues first before marketing, because that's the foundation of good marketing is starting with what happens with the experience inside.
No, I think that's great advice, and that is kind of off topic, but it comes back to the leadership. Currently reading Extreme Ownership right now, and it's amazing how much leadership it can really drive those employees to be better just through watching you be a great leader.
Yep.
Yeah. And I another thing too is that I think that going back to that concept of the brand story, but making customers the hero of the story rather than making yourself the hero of the story is a key component of a good brand strategy. And so that means that we make clients and customers that buy our products and services. We figure out in our marketing effort how to make them, the hero, because that's what appeals to them, rather than trying to make us, or our business or our people on our end the hero. And there's a lot of lessons because people it resonates with them and they can put themselves in those shoes. And I always say that story without strategy is art, and story with strategy is marketing. So if you're thinking about telling stories and you have a strategy behind it, that's what marketing is. Exactly what marketing is. It becomes an art piece or a movie or something if you don't have strategy behind it. But once you put strategy behind the story, that's what marketing is.
Join us next week as we finish our conversation with Jay Wilkinson.
Today's episode is brought to you by Champs Chicken. For deals, discounts, and updates, check out champschicken.com/connect. Be sure to stop by next week for another episode of QSR Nation, and be sure to check us out online at pfsbrands.com/podcast.